Homesteaders are in trouble. And I hope they've taken the proper precautions, because they may not realize what's coming. Now, how can a person predict the future if you don't know the future? The only way you can predict the future is by history. History is the only way where you can predict the future. If you go back, and I mean way back, to the medieval days, the homesteaders back then had the same problems. They had problems with wolves, bears, and other animals trying to take their animals and protecting them. And back then, as far back as the medieval days, if they lost, for example, let's say they had 20 chickens and they lost half of them, it was devastating to them. It basically would destroy their lives. They would go hungry. There was extreme circumstances to them losing their animals. Their animals were their livelihood, and there was no way to replace them so easily. What they did in the medieval days, for you homesteaders that don't know, they would bring their animals inside their house at night. They would spread straw across the floor, and they would sleep with their animals. Now, there's a problem with that because, animals would urinate, cows, horses, whatever, and they urinate a lot, and desecrate inside the house. And the people were sleeping with this. Needless to say, the people did get sick, and they did get diseases, and it took them quite a few years before they realized what they were doing. But in the beginning, they had to find a way to protect those animals. Now, if you look at the homesteader now, well, you can't bring a cow or a goat into a homesteader's house because chances are they have wooden floors and they would just rot out and they would fall through. It wasn't like they had ground floors like they did back in the medieval days. So how is a homesteader going to protect his animals? Because he's going to have to. Because people are going to gang up and they're going to come and take them. And as they say, over your dead body. So with that in mind, you can't just have, for example, a barn with your sheep, your goats, inside a barn you lock up instead of your house like they did in the medieval days. You're going to have a much higher preparation. You're probably going to have a guard in that barn, and you're going to have to rotate with different family members. Now, at the same time, you want to think about, well, maybe I should dig a hole in the barn, and at least this way I have some place to get out of fire. Or maybe I should have a square, tiny room with, extremely 4-inch walls filled with gravel or ground. And that's where you'll sit as a guard. And if somebody tries to come in and steal your animals, you'll be able to repel those attackers. But one thing's for sure, if a depression does happen, or if law and order breaks down, you are going to need some form of protection as a homesteader. And if you wait and don't think about it now, well, you'll be thinking about it over top of somebody's funeral, and then it'll be too late. So back in the medieval days, like I said, they brought the animals in, which in turn they got sick. But you are going to need some form of barn. And if you don't have some form of barn and they're just walking around the field, that makes you more vulnerable. You're going to have to find a way to bring them in at night and protect them. And something between you and whoever tries to take them. Being in some form of barn, you can protect your animals against wild animals like wolves, bears, and so on and so forth. Wild dogs, packs, coyotes. But with them wandering around a field, now some homesteaders will get a donkey, a mule, and that'll help protect the herd. So That's an option too. But you may want to consider maybe a ghillie suit where you're actually laying in the field with your sheep and you're sleeping among them. And if somebody tries to take them, you can repel them with whatever weapon you have. But you definitely have to think about more than I need enough food, I need enough water. Your number one priority is going to be security for your animals if you don't want to lose them. Your second problem is going to be food. With food prices going up for people, they're definitely going up for animals. My dog food has gone up like an extra $5 a bag. I mean, every different type of food is going up. If you can't afford the food, well, many farmers that are higher than homesteaders are basically dumping their flocks. They are going to auction, and when they had, 300 head of cattle, they're dumping 150 head of cattle because they can't afford to feed them. Better to dump them at auction and make something than to make nothing. And that's what's going on. The price of fuel goes up, the price of food goes up because it takes more fuel to harvest that food. Now, at the same time, they say we're coming into a mass problem of homeless people and people going bankrupt on their credit cards, people losing their homes, foreclosures. They say this is right around the corner. And that means more people are going to end up homeless. The more people that are hungry, the more chances of a homesteader being robbed. And that's going to become more and more as time goes on. You think for a minute, a lot of people I've seen say, oh, you don't need a backpack, you don't need to bug out, you don't need nothing. And it's simply not true. If all of a sudden we were to run out of food here, well, somebody has to venture out and get food, which would be me. Somebody has to put a pack on and maybe travel to the next town, or on your way to the next town, or you come across a small farm. Will people like me that are moving with a backpack and looking for food talk to the farmer or the homesteader and try to work some of it off in order to get the food? Or will they just see those chickens running around saying, look, I can just grab 2 of those and be gone? Theft will be on the rise. And they will not care about the chances of being shot because hunger will drive them to what they need to do. So I hope if you're a homesteader, you've taken security precautions in many different ways on how to protect your animals, not only from the wild environment, but also from people that will be traveling looking for food and then working their way back, because homesteaders are going to be a target. Like the Amish around me, I've asked them directly, what would you do if somebody came in and started taking your animals or whatever? They told me they would just pray to God and let it happen. Amish are very, very docile. Will you do that? Will you pray to God, and will you turn around and sit back and say, it must be meant to be? Or will you have different security in place to where you can protect your food and your animals and put up some form of barrier? And then it comes down to the question of, well, what type of barrier? Will it be a barrier that you want them to see, like you put a tower out so they see it during the daytime, so they say, oh, I don't know if we want to mess with that guy. It looks like he's kind of prepared and ready for us, compared to a guy with an open field. That's something to consider and think about. Do you put in artificial barriers that send a message to whoever's thinking about robbing you that you have something here and it's going to be a little bit of a problem to get it? If you're a homesteader, something to think about. I'll catch you guys on the next one.